Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. What do we got today, Rick?
We got the Fantasy Playoff League winners.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's poppin'?
That was so creepy. For those of you just listening, he grabbed his mic, put it right next to my ear.
I got
and said,
real
"What's poppin'?"
close.
Bro, social distance. Come on.
We both took tests before we came in.
Yes.
That's a lie for me.
No, it's not. It's not that.
Sorry, you're right. How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Before the show started, we were arguing about how good the Bucks actually are, and
You want to hear my argument?
no,
Didn't think you did.
I already heard it, so I'm good. He thinks the Bucks are gonna make the playoffs. I mean, wow. See, I think the
Yeah, I
Patriots
do think they're gonna make the playoffs.
No, I didn't mean it like that. I meant he thinks the Bucks are gonna make a run at it, and they can beat anyone in the league.
I said they can lose in the first round just as easily as they can make a run at it.
And I think the Bucks are gonna lose to the Detroit Lions this week. But that's just me.
They play in Minnesota this week, actually.
They are.
Yeah.
So you lied to me.
They play Detroit next week. I'm sorry.
All right, whatever. So anyway, my name is Morgan Colby. If you have never listened to this podcast, I got Rick Lemon with me as always, if I haven't said our names already. On this episode, we got an interesting show because we were doing trade targets on Wednesdays, and gets difficult late in the season when there's no more trades. So we're slowly trying to figure out exactly what we're going to talk about on a week-to-week basis. Last week we did a Week 12 kind of late season recap of what was going on in the season. This week we're going to be doing a episode on league winners. So this is not future league winners for next year. This is right
Playoff
now.
league winners. And then next
Playoff
week
league winners.
we're gonna do the other show, right?
Yes,
We're gonna do the questions.
Questions
Yep.
from YouTube, Twitter, wherever, and we'll try our best to answer those as best we can for next week. But anyway, league winners on this episode. We're going to try our best to give you the best insight for your fantasy playoffs going from Week 14, Week 15, Week 16. We're going to talk about three positions, no tight ends. Because unless you have Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson, and Darren Waller, check the waiver wire show for our ideas on tight ends.
Yep.
There's a lot of good ones out there. Mark Andrews is startable. A lot of other guys, but you get the
Hunter
picture.
Henry?
I'm not going to tell you a league winner at tight end at this point.
No.
But anyway, we'll talk about quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers, and we got a plethora of guys to go through. There are still guys out there who could be league winners, who could be really good players, but we just didn't put them on this list. So don't be like, oh my God, you guys are stupid for not putting this player on the
these are
list.
just guys that caught our eye, and we feel like that are
Yep.
really could be league winners.
So before we jump right into that, check out our website, thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter at the FFChamps, on Instagram at thefantasychampions, like us at facebook.com/thefantasychampions. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, you can subscribe, leave a review, share this podcast with your friends. Subscribing is the best way to support the show. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like and comment down below. Anything you want related to league winners. So let's start with the quarterback position. We have a couple of guys. I talked about this man's, and it's going to be hard this week. You're gonna feel a little vomit in your throat after the performance that he had. But it's Justin Herbert, and he had 6 points against New England, 17 against Buffalo. So the last couple of weeks he's been very, very disappointing. But in the fantasy playoffs,
And that's an extra point touchdown league too.
No, this is the staff league.
Why do I have 15?
Jeez, I don't know.
You sure?
It might be. Who knows?
Whatever.
Do you have 15?
I have 15.
Dude, I'm gonna be big mad if this is 6 point. It doesn't really matter. You got 6 points regardless.
Okay.
It doesn't matter the league.
Yeah.
But anyway, the next couple weeks for Justin Herbert, he has Atlanta, Las Vegas, and then Denver. Denver, which he had 23 fantasy points in Week 8 against. He's had a couple of really difficult games. So, but I don't think any quarterback struggles against the New England Patriots. Had I had a chance this week in my home league, which I think is the only league that I have Justin Herbert in, I would have pulled him out of the game and started even Baker Mayfield over him because of the fact that New England is just very, very good against the quarterback position, unless that quarterback's name is Deshaun Watson, I guess. But I knew Herbert wasn't going to have a great week. But coming out of that against Atlanta and against Las Vegas, it is going to be really, really easy for him to have success. So unless the Chargers have just methodically completely exploded internally, I think that he has a really great shot of putting up massive numbers in the first 2 rounds of fantasy playoffs and then getting the job done against Denver in week 16, where he'll probably get 21 to 22 fantasy points. So I think he's a great player to have, and he can carry it. We were talking about Kyla Murray early in the season being a league winner, and his schedule is just way too difficult.
We talked about it at the time, saying like his end of season schedule is brutal. In the last few weeks, he hasn't been great, and it's not gonna. Yeah. It seems like it's gonna continue. But with Herbert, I think not anyone, but a lot of people, especially us Patriots fans, would have called his poor performance against the Patriots, not because we're that confident, but because Bill Belichick just historically does very well against rookie quarterbacks. So, like, you didn't want to start him in your league. I didn't want to start him in the league that I own him too.
Right.
So it was kind of just not obvious, but it was a play that we're like, we don't think he's going to do good this week. Now, going forward with his schedule, it's the opposite. He gets Atlanta this week. I think he bounces back in a big way.
Yeah.
Then he's got, let's see, it was Atlanta. Yeah, the Raiders. That's another fantastic matchup. And then Denver, which isn't as good as those other two, but it's still a green matchup. It's still a good matchup. Not bad. So his playoff schedule is just fantastic, and I think he's going to get 20 a week for each week.
Yeah, and I think he's one of those guys too, because when you're talking about a league-winning player, some of them are drafted in the first round, and you have, like, when we're talking about these guys, some of them are going to be drafted in the first round, some of them are going to be drafted in the second round, and some of these guys are just going to be waiver wire pickups. But the reason why they're on this list is because they're probably going to be on a lot of teams that win championships.
Yeah.
And so we believe that at this point, unless if Justin Herbert collapses, we apologize because we lost a lot of leagues in that point. But I'd put a lot on Justin Herbert having some good games. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does against Atlanta and how he bounces back. It was concerning that he had 15 points against Buffalo. That was a very, very concerning game. But I think that going forward against Atlanta and Las Vegas, you could see some good things happen for him. So I would start him comfortably the next 2 weeks. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be like, oh my God, we need to not do this with Justin Herbert.
I'd still start comfortably.
Like I said, but people get burned easy in fantasy football.
I know. But other than the last 2 weeks, he's been fantastic. The Buffalo one is a little concerning.
Right.
But the New England week, we knew that was coming.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next guy. This guy, Rick.
This one's all me.
He begged me. He was like, dude, you need to get this on.
I would have mentioned him even if...
it's Tom Brady. And I don't believe it, but he wore the Patriots Brady shirt too, which is just totally embarrassing.
Embarrassing? Why is that?
I don't know.
I think you're just mad that you don't want Tom Brady with this elite playoff schedule.
I haven't been a fan of not just the old man quarterbacks, but Tom Brady late season just never pulls it off fantasy football wise. And so that's why I'm slightly hesitant when it comes to putting Tom Brady on this list as a league winning quarterback, because there's a chance that he goes off against the terrible teams that Rick's going to list in a second, or there's also a chance that he poops himself and just goes back to late season Brady. As far as fantasy football wise, I don't think he's garbage when it comes to real life.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm a little bit more hesitant than most people would be when it comes to Brady. But when you look at that schedule,
it's hard to deny.
It's hard not to be like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I beg to put Brady on this list just for that schedule because it is fantastic. And so they play Minnesota, Atlanta, and Detroit. So 3 very easy matchups, especially Atlanta, who I think ranks 31st against quarterbacks, and I think Detroit and Minnesota are both bottom 10. And what I'll say, Brady does historically struggle sometimes in playoff time for fantasy, although not always, because one year I had him in a championship game and he scored 30 points. But
Was
anyway,
that 2012?
it was like 2018, bro. No, 20. It was like 2016. Anyway, but if you are concerned about that,
Yeah.
that is a legit concern. But I will say, look at the games that he's playing. So Minnesota, week 14, is a home game in Tampa Bay, so weather will be nice. Week 15 and 16 are both dome games in Atlanta and in Detroit.
Yeah.
Brady in the dome, it's too good to be true. With those schedules as well, he should succeed. If he does bad, I will definitely eat my words and come on the show and apologize. But I'm as confident as he is in Herbert, I'm pretty confident in Tom Brady doing well against those matchups.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's going to do terrible, and he has surprised me this year, but it's just going through all the games that he's played,
It is gross.
he's been very inconsistent and all over the road, and people they carry the Tom Brady flag sometimes, and they're like, oh, I told you Tom Brady was going to be a top 7, top 8 quarterback, and I'm like, yeah, but did you actually start him on a week-to-week basis? Because if you did, you probably lost a lot of games. He had 21, 8, 22. This is going from week 1 on. 33, 13, 14, 36, 19, 5, 31, 14, 23. So, I mean, but he hasn't had back-to-back easy games like he has against Minnesota, Atlanta, and Detroit here in weeks 14, 15, and 16. If we just go based on the good matchups this year, he had 8 points against Carolina in week 2. He had 33 points against the Los Angeles Chargers in week 4. He had 36 against Las Vegas in week 7. He had 31 against Carolina in the rematch in week 10. And then that's all the easy matchup. I guess you could say
I had Denver as an easy one on my screen, which you got 22.
Denver is an easier matchup. He has 22. So with the exception of that crappy game against Carolina where they were just a complete disaster,
he's good in good matchups.
He's good in green matchups. Yeah. So I would say that Tom Brady is definitely a good league-winning option at quarterback. There's not a lot of them out there, I'll say that. Like, when you look at the quarterback position right now, there's just not a lot of guys that will win leagues.
Other than, like, Mahomes and Rodgers?
Yeah. I mean, the guys that you would say are automatic.
Yeah.
But, I mean, because Rodgers has Detroit week 14, Tennessee week 16, which are two very good matchups, but then he's got Carolina in week 15, who have been relatively good against quarterbacks. So, I mean, it could be a bad situation for Aaron Rodgers, but I just don't think that's going to happen. And he scored 36 touchdowns this year. He could be, I mean, you could consider him in the league winning conversation because of that. Right. Like he was drafted in like the 10th round?
Yeah,
somewhere around that. So what you got out of Rodgers and what you expected out of Rodgers, especially for me, is definitely two very different things, but he is a league winner. But there's just not a lot of guys available. A lot of people have said Lamar Jackson. I'm not in that train anymore.
I would consider Lamar in that. I do think he's going to be very good end of season. But I wouldn't put him on the same list as like Herbert or Brady, because I'm just not as confident because of how he's performed.
But he's got Cleveland, Jacksonville,
all great matchups. If you have Lamar, and you maybe have been really disappointed in him all year, I would just ride it out with Lamar.
I just don't think it. I don't think it's a great. Like, I don't think he's gonna. He might help people get to a championship, but I don't think he's gonna be on a lot of teams that win just because of his performances. We had a team in our league. What is he? 6-7, 7-6, with Lamar Jackson.
He's I think he's gonna be 8-5, actually. I believe so. Or 7-6. He's either 8-5 or 7-6.
But anyway, not a lot of teams had success to get to the playoffs with Lamar Jackson as their starting quarterback, especially going with him all year. But his playoff schedule is Cleveland, Jacksonville, Giants. It's an easier one, so he might be a decent option. But anyway, let's move on to the running back position. With the first guy being, we got 6 guys left to talk about, so we got to move pretty quickly. But anyway, so at the at the running back position, we have the first guy being Aaron Jones, and Rick was literally, he told me, my team in the home league didn't make the playoffs, and he was like, "Why are you putting all your players on this?" I'm like, I'm really not though. I planned for this run for the playoffs, and it didn't work out. But anyway, so for Aaron Jones, he has all of it comes down to schedule, but he's a guy that you could get late in the second round, early in the offseason. Late in draft season, I should say. He was a late second round pick in our league, I believe, and 12 team.
Yes.
Is that proper?
Yeah.
And so, but coming up in the next couple weeks, a guy who is average, and I'll go over the good matchup games for him because he hasn't had a lot of them all year. On the 2 games that were like back to back in terms of being good matchups, he was out. So he wasn't able to play in those 2 games. But he has Detroit, Carolina, Tennessee, last 3 weeks of the season. Very, very easy matchups.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
he's going to go off in those 3 weeks.
the only thing I'd be concerned about is the Jamal Williams effect, because how many touches does Aaron Jones get, like, compared to what he should?
He gets a lot of touches.
Oh, Peyton Barber got a touchdown.
Gross. He gets about, I would say he gets about 18 to 22 touches a game.
Which is still very good, but he should get more because Jamal Williams gets like 12 a game.
It makes sense why they don't do that, but
yeah, that's the only thing that I would be concerned about, because other than that, like, his schedule is so easy. Like, the Detroit Lions, I feel like that's 20 fantasy points.
Mm-hmm.
Carolina, I feel like that's probably 20 fantasy points. And then Tennessee, that's probably like 15 to 20. So, like...
Yeah. But against those really good matchups this year, Minnesota week 1, 16, Detroit week 2, 45, Jacksonville week 13, he had 13 points. I mean, week 10, he had 13 points. But I think the big thing, and this is why I was intrigued by Aaron Jones, is that he gets all the goal line work for the most part.
Yes.
And like, if you look at that game against the Detroit Lions, he scored 1 touchdown receiving, 2 touchdowns rushing, 8 targets, 4 receptions, 18 rushes, 168 yards. Like, Aaron Jones is capable of these monster performances where he puts up like 45 fantasy points, 40 fantasy points, 35 fantasy points on any given week. And I think that what you get for a base floor of 15 points per game, 16 points per game, gives you a good floor to start with. And then if he goes off, I mean, he could win you a week. So, and I think against Detroit, Carolina, and Tennessee, that's what you're going to get. And I think having him on your team is league winning. I don't like to put players back-to-back years league winners because he was on a lot of fantasy championship teams last year. But I think Aaron Jones is going to be a guy who's on a lot of fantasy championship
I know he's a back-to-back league winner though, kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's been great all year. He's the RB5 in points per game this season, which is really good because, you know, that
you were hating on him last week. You were like, he's overrated. I'm like,
I did I say he was overrated?
You kind of did, yeah. You told me.
I kind of did.
You said he was. You said he wasn't as good as people thought he was, and then you told me that you'd rather have Joe Mixon.
I don't remember these conversations that you come up with.
You literally tried to compare him to Joe Mixon. And
I would compare him.
I had
to
to
Mixon,
point by point destroy.
If he didn't have that 80-yard run, dude.
If you put Joe Mixon on the Packers, then I think he's the same. But on the Bengals,
no. I think what I was, because you always take my words and just make them worse than what they actually are. What I was saying was he consistently gets like 12 points a week, which is true.
15.
You see what you're doing right now?
Yeah.
Look at his schedule, bro. He gets like 12 points a week.
16,
other than the good matchups.
16, 45, 16, 22, 13, 12, 13, 17, 10, 23. So this season like he has 1,
which is good.
2, and 3 games under 13 points.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, like, he rarely has those.
He's a top 5 running back. The point is, I make it sound bad, but he was trying to say that he wasn't a top 5 running back.
I think
and he is.
Now he is, yeah. But I think leading up to this point, I'm not sure.
Okay. Anyway, let's move on to the next guy. Okay. We have is Derrick Henry. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, why'd you put Derrick Henry on this list? He's already he was a first round pick, and he."
Is that how you think people sound when they're
exactly when they get triggered? He has Jacksonville, Detroit, Green Bay. And those are all like deep green matchups. Those are all very easy 5-star Fantasy Pros 5-star matchups.
I think in those 3 weeks he could easily get like 90 points total.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think this guy literally he's been disappointing. Week 13 against Cleveland, 4 fantasy points, garbage. They got blown out, so they weren't rushing it at all in that game. They couldn't. But for the most part, I mean, you're talking about this guy has a 40-point game and a 38-point game this season. And I think he could do 30 points 3 straight weeks.
Yeah, it's insane.
I don't think he's going to do that, but I think that he is going to be. Once again, we bring up the he's going to be on a lot of. Dude, my goodness,
you gotta.
I know this is ridiculous. He's going to be on a lot of championship rosters.
Yes.
Just because of that. I would say he's probably been the second best running back this year in fantasy football.
Yeah, I'd probably say third, but yeah, second
him.
or third. Well, actually, you know what? He is second because I think Kamara was first.
Yeah.
But since Drew Brees has been hurt,
Yeah.
Kamara's not nearly as good as he was. So I would probably say Derrick Henry over Kamara.
Yeah. I mean, especially like if you were 7th, 8th overall, and you got Derrick Henry, you probably won a lot of games. But I think with that schedule, it's too easy.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, I'd put him number 1 on this list among running backs.
Yeah.
Out of every player, actually, on this list that we're going to talk about, Derrick Henry, I think to me is the ultimate league winner.
Yeah. What about the next guy, Rick?
Dude, David Montgomery, your guy, finally showing up a little bit.
Gave him opportunity.
You know what's great? I made a TikTok. Shout out the TikTok.
Yeah.
Like 2 weeks ago. A little more than that. Like 3 weeks ago. It was right before DeAndre Swift got the starting job, and I said like 3 players to trade for before your trade deadline.
Is this a PPR league that I'm looking at?
I don't know. I think so. Yeah, you are. That is PPR. And I put David Montgomery on my list, and I got like most people liked it, but there was like I remember reading like 2 or 3 comments that were like, David Montgomery, dude, he just blows. That offensive line blows, and David Montgomery blows. And I was like, okay. We'll see. Because that schedule, look at his schedule, week 12 to week 17. No, even further. Yeah.
Week 9, Tennessee, easy matchup. Week 10, Minnesota, easy matchup. Week 12, Green Bay, easy matchup. Detroit, easy matchup. Houston, easy matchup. Minnesota, easy matchup. Jacksonville, easy matchup. If you have your week 17 championships, Green Bay, easy matchup.
It's all easy.
He's had just 2 games under 10 fantasy points this year.
But yeah, no, it's just, right, and that's the thing. People were hating on him before these 2 weeks where he's kind of blown up, but he's been good all year, really.
I remember a lot of people coming out of the draft, and I felt this way too. David Montgomery is not a top 5 running back, nor will he ever be in the NFL a top 5 running back. You know what he is? Frank Gore when he was good, when Frank Gore was elite. Fantasy football elite Frank Gore, top 9, 11, 12.
Yep.
That's what David Montgomery is. He's going to finish every season top 12, top 13. And it's exactly what he's doing this year. And he's been very good, especially the last couple of weeks.
Unless the Bears all of a sudden become the Chiefs and they score like 50,000 touchdowns, then David Montgomery might become a top 5 back.
That's not going to.
But that's probably not going to happen. No. But anyway, Montgomery, like, he's been very efficient too the last few weeks. He wasn't crazy efficient against Detroit, but he got the touches and the touchdowns. Week 14 against Houston, easy matchup.
Yeah.
Week 15 against Minnesota, easy matchup.
Right.
And week 16, championship game, would have win you the league against Jacksonville. That feels like 15 to 20 points.
Yeah,
week.
I would agree. And I think the thing with David Montgomery is he's just not a sexy player.
Yeah, people view him as literally a bench player.
Yeah. So I don't at this point he's RB11 right now in PPR, and I don't. Like, he had 25 against Green Bay, 27 against Detroit. You think this is it? If he starts getting 20 points a game,
the breakout.
It could be. Oh God, don't do this to me, Monty. I gave up on you, and then I ungave up on you. I'll stick with it. I love you, Monty. I will always love it.
You always will.
Wide receiver, we have AJ Brown. He does have an easier schedule here at the end of the season, and I think that. It's harder to predict his games, I guess. He's had some really great performances since coming back from his injury. 21, 22, 27, 12, 23, 16, 25, 8. So, and he's not getting massive amount of target share, but we knew that about AJ Brown from the start. The only thing I'm concerned about is that he went on this massive stretch of touchdown games. It was 5 straight games, and then he didn't score a touchdown, and then he scored 2 straight, and then this past week didn't score a touchdown. So I'm concerned that happens over the last couple weeks of the season. But against Jacksonville, Detroit, and Green Bay, I think Green Bay is a harder matchup with Jair Alexander, but I think with Jacksonville and Detroit, it is very, very reasonable to think A.J. Brown is going to carry you to your fantasy championship if you have him in your wide receiver slot.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And usually if A.J. Brown does have a bad week, which he doesn't usually do often, he bounces back in a big way as well. So with the 6 points this past week against Cleveland, Going up against Jacksonville, I could easily see like a 20-point week.
Yeah.
And then he gets another 20 against Detroit, and he pretty much has carried you or helped carry you to your championship.
Yeah.
And then even Green Bay, like it's not a great matchup, but the way AJ Brown plays, like he could only get targeted like 4 times and get like 3 catches for 90-something yards and a touchdown. You'll be fine. So AJ Brown is a very good league winner.
I think too, he's the type of player. He's like Aaron Jones, where he could just blow up at any time. You know, he can literally take
one play.
He could get 2 catches for 8 yards total in the game, and then in one play
late in the
he
fourth
rips
quarter
off a 70-yard touchdown and wins your fantasy league. So I do think he's a really great player. AJ Brown is probably my favorite wide receiver in the NFL right now.
And you still traded him away.
I still traded him away. I had to get Aaron Jones.
Fair.
Got to get my league winner. I'm just not even going to win my league. I'm so mad right now. But anyway, yeah, I think you can pick him up. The next guy we have at wide receiver is Allen Robinson. Less sexy, but I feel like a lot of teams are going to quietly have this man's on their team when the fantasy championship's all said and done and they're holding the fantasy trophy in your league. Allen Robinson last couple weeks has had 27 and 13 with Mitch back. He had less targets last week than he had the previous week of 13 against Green Bay, but he put up 27 fantasy points against one of the best cornerbacks in the league.
Yeah.
So I feel like Allen Robinson is with the games against Houston, Minnesota, and Jacksonville in the last 3 weeks of the season, games where they're probably going to have to keep up and they're going to have to throw the football. Allen Robinson is for sure a great play.
And even when they don't have to keep up, like Jacksonville, he's still going to be very efficient with his targets. And it's also weird. I think Trubisky's probably going to start rest of the season. It seems like Allen Robinson's actually, as much as you complained about him with Trubisky earlier in the year and last season, feels like he's better with Trubisky than he was with Foles.
I don't think it's because he's better. I think it's just because they take more risks as a team.
Well,
like Trubisky, yes. Trubisky likes to throw the ball down the field.
Foles takes some risks sometimes.
Foles doesn't throw the ball down the field at all.
He doesn't throw the ball down the field. That's fair. Not as much.
He plays it safe, and that's why he is decent at what he does. But Trubisky will launch it down the field if he needs to.
Yeah, so that's good for Allen Robinson. It looks like that's the direction they're going to go in with Trubisky. And as you said, Houston, Minnesota, Jacksonville, that is just a gold mine.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if he gets under 10 points in any of these weeks. He's a perfect wide receiver too for a championship team.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to blow up to the point where like he's getting 20 points a game and he physically pulls out a fantasy championship for you, when you need it. But I do think that he's going to be a guy that's on a lot of fantasy championship rosters. He's going to be a guy that gets you 15 to 20 fantasy points every single week and just gets you what you need. You know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah.
So I think it's going to be interesting to see how he performs rest of season. It is hard because Allen Robinson has Mitch Trubisky as his quarterback. So he could very well, against one of these good matchups, just poop himself. Because
it's true.
Trubisky blows. But the final guy, Rick, what's his name?
We got Robert Woods. And he's kind of similar to what you just said with Allen Robinson, where he's not gonna, you don't think he's gonna like blow up in any week, but he's just gonna be consistent for you. That's what Robert Woods does. He's just a consistent, solid player. Like his floor is usually always pretty high, and he has the potential to go out and get like a 25 to 30 point week. It's possible with him. Unless, half PPR, it's more like 25. PPR, it's more like 30. Anyway, but his schedule, rest of the season, New England, that's the only tough one. But believe it or not, New England hasn't been the best against wide receivers this year. They're like middle of the pack. And then he's got the Jets and Seahawks, which are the two best, or two of the three. I think Atlanta's up there too. But the Jets and Seahawks are two of the best matchups you can get for a wide receiver. I think both those weeks, semifinal and championship week, unless you have a week 17 championship, which even so, he plays Arizona in week 17, which is another good matchup. But if you just do the week 16 championship like most people, it's a Dave Montgomery type of matchup. Seattle, it's perfect for him.
Yeah.
And then the Jets in week 15, another perfect matchup. And even this week against New England, I don't think it's going to be awful for him.
Yeah.
I think Gilmore will probably play on more Cooper Kupp. And they'll use Robert Woods in end arounds and sweeps and stuff like that. So he'll still have a decent floor this week. I think Robert Woods is, just like Allen Robinson, a perfect wide receiver too for a championship team.
Yeah, I agree. I think New England matchup is concerning because they are not. I mean, if J.C. Jackson plays for New England, I think it's going to be a tougher day for Robert Woods.
Sure.
But I don't think that I don't think it's going to be like he'll get 10 points minimum. That's not the week. That's not the week that we're really focusing on. It's the Jets and the Seahawks.
Yeah.
Those 2 weeks are probably going to be big weeks. So, hey, you know what? At the end of the season, we're going to talk about real league winners who actually won your fantasy championships over the last 3 weeks of the season here. And we'll see if we were right. We have something to fact check ourselves on. See if we suck or not.
True.
So, unless you have anyone else you wanted to reference.
I think that's really... Oh, hey, Buccaneers wide receivers, bro. Come on. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin.
Yeah.
You saw that schedule.
It's so ridiculously good, and I hate every second of it. I don't believe in them at all. I feel like Mike Evans is going to get like 4 points a game the rest of the season and just crush everyone's soul.
It could happen.
It could happen. Don't forget to check out our website, thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and we'll talk to you tomorrow, Fantasy Champs.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.